Board games, board games. We might be looking within board games, board games, and talking to Daniel Chin.
Hey,
We are talking about stuff we love. We are talking about stuff below and above. I don't know where you put your games. Maybe you put them on the floor, or maybe you
I
hang
do.
them up to the ceiling, and that's okay, of course. But
Yay.
so that's what I meant by above and below. Regardless, I'm going to say hello. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. It's any MHUK time for Betty Beats and Board Game Bladder, episode 914, meeting Daniel Chin. Thank you so much for joining us, Daniel. Or
Thank you for having me.
um, I noticed that I've sometimes been calling you Dan, and but you typed your name as Daniel. Which do you prefer?
I guess Daniel, my full name, but honestly, it's kind of I kind of meld into either one. But yeah, I guess I would prefer Daniel if I
Okay,
had to make
sure
a
thing.
choice.
And I put out a public call to say, hey, does anyone want to join me before I wind this series down? And you answered the call. And I think we first met maybe, I don't know, around 2016, something like that, when I launched In a Bind. And it's been a real honor to have you back fairly often at UK Games Expo for the 2 p.m. event. And I would say that's been the bulk of our interaction, to be honest, until today, when hopefully we'll get to know a wee bit more about you. So, if someone's watching this, obviously there's a lot of information scrolling at the bottom, but what would you like people to know?
I am predominantly a gamer ever since 2013, when gaming sort of had this big board gaming had a really big started growing really big in the UK, and yeah, I've been trying to see. I'm always keen to seek out uh, unique games, something that nobody else has played, and I get to show it off. And come 2016, when I went to the London game market, I saw Bears for the first time, and I just loved how they had such a compact game with such really striking art. It's nothing like I had seen at the time with the original In the Binds before it became Yogi. Not that Yogi is not good. They both have great appeal, and
You don't need to justify yourself, it's all good. But so, for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, yeah, this is the original art as it was published. Photograph, I believe this one's by Eric Yurko, and you can see there's a little reference to how I used to look with this card touching left eyebrow. There's a bunch of characters based on people that I knew, and the way it turns out is people are all contorted. And here's a wee picture of how it looked before it was published, like as a prototype, when I still had, okay, how am I going to differentiate the heights of things? And so rather than make bits of your body really big, I had these arrows and things that were later realized to be a bit superfluous. But so you were drawn in, and I'm very glad to have had you as one of the people that got entranced by this game, presumably by the crowd. And so you talk about wanting to know the niche things. Is it a would you be someone who, if you go to Spiel, I don't think have you ever been to Spiel?
I've always wanted to go to Spiel and visit Essen in Germany.
But
Yeah.
I imagine you as someone that if you went to Spiel, you would be far more likely to just ignore everything on the hotness list and just go to see, okay, let's see what this small Korean stand's all about. And let's see what these Iranians are all about. And let's see what these Israelis are, because like these are the games that fly under the radar. And then you'll bring them, and it's like this might not be the game to change your entire life, who knows, it might be. But like, I mean, there's just so much that with thousands of games just released at this one event. Of course, there's 100 that get promoted quite a bit on Board Game Geek, but then there's all these other people who, yeah, don't manage to rise up those ranks.
100%. And hey, if I didn't look out for the underdogs, I literally would not have found you and become a fan of what I feel is like, one of my most one of my game designs that's very close to my heart, and one that I'm always keen to support in whatever they do.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. But of course, this is not just about you being here and flattering me, as much as I do enjoy that. So let's move forward and talk about what we've been up to recently. The recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. Personally, what I did yesterday, I sent off some games to people who are going to be helping me at Aircon, preparing for that. I did a wee bit of art direction for the second edition of a game about selecting 7 cards, speedily searching for synergies. Ooh. So this has already been kickstarted, and it is running a wee bit late, but finally the files are all done. I feel like now everything's in a slightly better place than it was when it was first printed, and I'm excited to get that out. I also made a lot of time for myself to get out yesterday, be outside for a few hours. I'm trying to take Mondays off. And what I'm also working towards is having Tuesdays as a day of playing games. I'm immensely privileged that, Tuesdays, hopefully having a friend over in the morning, early afternoon, and then having someone else over for playtesting today. But that's later. But arranging that and organizing things and making sure that there are systems in place for me to have these face-to-face interactions that I feel are so important to me. How about you, Daniel? What have been some of your recent highlights, and what was the last game you played?
The last game that I played yesterday was in my regular role-playing game campaign with my friends that's been going on since 2019. I'm really glad it's survived all this time, as it's been a great source of companionship and comfort every fortnight. Anything else? I've been actually getting back into playing tabletop games. That's kind of very relevant to this talk today, because I've finally had like a couple. I've found like a really nice space where I live, and I've like been able to drop into some folks that I know, some gaming folks, and I've actually played a new game last week.
Brilliant.
Really interesting one about that's kind of like a fantasy Carcassonne with real-time action. It was really fascinating to get a new kind of.
Do you know the name of it?
Oh goodness!
Fantasy Carcassonne with real-time action. That sounds very intriguing. That sounds like something I'd want to at least look up a review for.
Oh goodness! I'll be sure to definitely send the link later. But I think it was something like not quite. It wasn't alchemy. It was more like it's like a mage city or something like that.
Okay, I'll have a wee look while you keep telling us about anything else that you got up to. And with the RPG that you've been doing since 2019, can I ask which system it is? And are you the games master, or are you one of the player characters?
I am. It is the fantasy role-playing game 5th edition that we all are very familiar with. It is. I'm player character, and I play. I was originally a cleric for a good while, but I've actually switched to a monk this year. and it's been a very interesting change in roles, basically, because the cleric was very much more a business guy, very much serious, always task driven, and kind of pushing the direction of where the party was going. But I've kind of reversed my roles, where I'm very much passive, and I'm the child to two. I'm basically a child to two of the main characters. A 150-year-old elf who is a child to two main characters that is younger than them. It's a it's a very interesting experience.
That sounds fantastic, and I wonder if the game you're talking about is Sorcerer City.
That's the
Here's a
one.
proposal
Yes, yes.
by James Hudson, who was involved with the publication, and it looks like a beautiful game. Obviously, this is a fairly standard stock photo with all the things laid out in, but this is just a wonderful image, I have to admit, and it shows everything off very nicely. And yeah, I'll definitely be checking that out.
Mm. I highly recommend it.
Okay, so talking about brilliant things, what would you say is maybe an underrated brilliant thing? Brilliant thing? What's a little thing which is brilliant?
Hey. Okay. I guess something that's underrated. I mean, something that is kind of all around us, but but that I think some people may find hard to vocalize, and I know that I've had to practice myself a lot. Is connections, if that makes sense. I've had a bit of a rough mid-February, and I'm honestly I'm just glad that I have a bunch of folks that I can talk to about my worries, and without being judged, and were happy to listen, if not work through the stuff with me. I feel like the people around you are underappreciated, and can be underappreciated if you don't explicitly say it, because there's like this idea that you take them for granted sometimes. But I just want to give a shout out to all the listeners out there, and I'm glad to be friends with you all.
That's a lovely, beautiful sentiment. And I think it's a really important thing that people, as you say, don't judge, but also that before they give any advice, because sometimes that's what you're looking for, sometimes you want people to give advice, but first do spend the time and energy actively listening. And maybe if you're unsure what that looks like, repeating things back to the person. So this is how you feel, and checking in with them. But sometimes it's not about finding solutions. Sometimes it's just about sharing your sorrows. Sometimes it's about sharing your joys. And you just want to say, hey, this is a great thing. And hopefully we can feel together a little bit more. And I think human connections are such a big part of the joy of being humans, because we are a group animal for sure.
Mm.
Now, this is a surprise section, but questionably quick questions is the next section. It's not an interrogation, it's just a questionably quick questions section.
Hey.
So, would you like do you prefer cubes or cards? First thing that comes into your head.
Cubes, I guess.
Cubes. Boom. What's your favorite shape of dice?
Square.
Just a
Six.
cube.
Yes.
And what's your favorite? What books or podcasts?
Podcasts.
And what's the last one you listened to?
The Adventure Zone steeplechase.
Ooh, who would you recommend that to? Would you recommend it to me?
I don't know if you're into role-playing games, but I think it's an interesting system to introduce you to Blades in the Dark, and I think there's a lot of absurdity in there that I like. I don't know if that's your kind of humor, but I recommend any Adventure Zone podcast, anyone who wants to get into role-playing.
Live play?
Yes. Sorry, am I talking too fast?
No, you're not. So Adventure Zone Steeplechase?
Yes, yes. That's the latest in their anthology series of role-playing game podcasts.
I love it. And finally, what is the first memory that you can remember that you're willing to share with us?
First memory. Okay, so I think when I was very young, I was goodness, I was like 3 years old maybe, and the strongest memory that I have is my brother being a teacher of the theory of the theory of the mind, basically that other people exist outside yourself, and basically my brother was copying the words and I was saying, and I was basically like, hey, stop copying me, mom, Gabriel's copying me, and yeah, that's always stuck with me as a as a teaching moment of like, oh my god, this person is imitating me. He exists outside me, and yeah, that's
That sounds funny, and I think it can be a really interesting thing why that bothers humans so much to have someone copy you. Because in theory, it should be just something that we can discard out of our consciousness. But in reality, you could argue that it attacks the very sense of self.
mm.
Uh, so, as we go into the main topic, which is just having a friendly chat, I invite everyone who's watching to please do comment, ask questions. I mean, obviously, I like people following, liking, following, whatever is appropriate, where, however you're watching. But the reason that I do these things live is largely to get that conversation going. So please chime in along the way. Now, I would like to delve in to some of your gaming gloves. So you
Ooh,
mentioned in your bio actually that you're a big fan of Alien Frontier. Oh, sorry,
ooh,
Alchemy. And
Alchemists.
yes, sorry, Alchemists.
Don't worry.
I'm now. I don't think this is one that I've played yet. I'm
Hmm.
aware of the way that you've got the app and then it gives you clues and all this stuff going on. But what is it about this game that really draws you towards it?
So, in a sort of complicated layer sandwich, it's very much like it's almost like the game is a perfectly built sandwich to illustrate what it means to be a academic uh, biochemical researcher. Because on the first layer you have the deduction game, because you have like 8 ingredients and what each ingredient is equal to. Like, yeah, right there. Each ingredient is randomized in every game thanks to the app, and so you're on a race to discover. You're testing like 2 ingredients together and figuring out what potion is made to sort of deduce what each card component equates to which ingredient, right?
Mm-mm.
So that's like one layer of the layer sandwich, and then while you're doing that, you're also trying to basically be a famous researcher uh, in the world of alchemy, because you've got to publish your findings uh, and say that, oh, I think the mandrake is equal to this symbol, and you get prestige. You have to pay them, and you get prestige for it, and you become famous. And that is if you are if you get your deductions right, because at the end of the game, if your deductions are wrong, then you lose prestige because, dude,
Of
dude,
course.
you're a fraud. Uh, the layer on top of that is the sort of debunking aspect, where other people think, hey, that mandrake is not that simple. I think you are wrong, and you can and like within the system of the game, you can actually say try and prove that this is not that simple, and
Mm-mm.
and you crash your opponent's prestige, you gain prestige, and then you can also publish a new theory, and that feels it's very it's almost kind of pugilistic in the way that you're trying to pugilistically brainy in the way that you're trying to oust each other in terms of trying to prove what is the right theory and whatnot.
And
then,
it does sounds really like a simulation of the scientific method in the end. And a quick hello to Timmy. Thank you for joining us as always.
Yeah, I mean, and that's only like that's only like 2 layers of the sandwich. I've not gotten into the mini auction mechanic when you're trying to sell your potions. You've got to buy lab equipment, and at there's also like the consequences of testing on a student, where if you poison them, you have to pay the student now to do more tests. And you can also poison yourself and basically lose prestige because you've gotten sick from your potions. And of course, there's the exhibition, like at game conventions, where you brew potions and showcase them off, and you get more prestige because you've made a really cool potion. It's honestly very, for me, it's beautiful and a great way to communicate what it means to be an academic researcher without like being too in your face about it.
And given what you spend most of your time doing, this fits your interest perfectly. But it does sound like it's not enough to just have a bunch of complex mechanisms that are within the game. It's all about the fact that all of these tie into one another perfectly and create a bigger whole. I mean, honestly, you've absolutely sold me. And if I see it, the one thing is obviously someone in the playgroup needs to have the app. It's not as easy, I guess, to just borrow it from a convention library at TerraCon. You need to say, well, make sure that you spend a couple of minutes beforehand downloading the app. But now I'll see if maybe I can get it played at TerraCon. Well, who knows? And sorry, what were you about to say?
Oh no, don't worry.
And you do love other games, and one that, and not actually, embarrassingly, I don't think I've played Alien Frontiers either. It's often touted as one of the first big Kickstarter successes, obviously massively shadowed now by much bigger things, but this is a game which is, I understand it's kind of worker placement, but it also uses dice, but it's still got the mechanism where higher numbers are generally better, right?
Yeah, well, it's there's a degree of nuance to it. So aside from being the first Kickstarter, like about almost around the time when I got into board games, there's a thing with worker placement games being very much there's the nuance is very much I put a thing there and I block someone from doing that particular action, and there's a kind of sadness here. But when you replace the workers with dice, cube dice, funnily enough, there's actually a degree of with like your roll and stuff, and ideally get high numbers. You put them on the solar energy panels, and you get more solar energy, or you put them on the lunar rock, and you get some lunar rock, of course. But what if someone else rolls? But you might have taken the space now, but if someone rolls a high number, you can oust the other players out and also get moon rock, which is like one degree of nuance. The second degree of nuance here is the sort of terraforming and adding the colonies onto the planet Maxwell, where of course you can just dunk random dice onto to advance colony building and placement. But if you like get certain strings of number, I think that allows it to push your colony movement faster. It allows you to build faster. So there's a nice luck based thing there. also where you place. So many people are saying Alien Frontiers.
No, that was me.
Okay.
So I could put it on the screen.
Right. So you don't. Yes. You. Where you place your colonies on the planet allows you to get special powers. Like in the center, you get the artifact ship dice, which allows you to roll more dice and do more actions. And the final thing that hits the right area of crunch for me is the alien power tech cards because they allow you to basically have a greater control probability. The polarity device is one of my top devices, which allows you to basically invert the dice upside down and have greater control of the numbers and allow you to string more combos together. I think on rounding that out is a sort of constantly scaling victory points collector counter.
It feels like in terms of decision space, it's, I mean, I'm not going to say it's identical or even that similar, but it seems like it fits a similar size and scope of decision space to Alchemists. And it's interesting that I kind of feel like I get a sense of you like pondering stuff, you like putting things together, you like exploring the ramifications, you like this sort of, okay, what's if that's and that. I mean, Alien Frontiers, I must admit, just because of the prevalence of the dice, doesn't quite feel like a game for me. But what astonishes me and delights me, maybe, is that then in a bind, this completely ridiculous game. I don't know if this is just because you are coming on to my show, and I hope that it's not that you felt obliged to bring this up, but then this feels like the outlier of those three games. And it, you did, so I guess it just goes to show that everyone is an omni gamer, because you also talk about loving playing tabletop role playing games, and I would like to actually explore what you wrote in your bio about it being something that is a form of practicing public speaking.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess yeah. In sort of I guess ever since I was young, I think I was quite a reserved person, and public speaking is I think yeah, it's one of my personal areas that I'm acutely aware of having very shortcomings in. Uh, though, and I think this goes back to how I got into board games in the first place, right? In 2013, when my favorite review, my now still close to my heart review show, Sharp and Sit Down, they had a very refreshing take on how they talked about games. It felt very dynamic and very personal, multiple camera angles, and just sort of a display of passion. And I guess I saw that as a sort of a key into me improving that skill as a way of practicing explaining stuff, going through rules, and showing attentiveness. So I it got it to a stage where I even started a board game club at my school, and that was really fun. And it even carried on for a while after I went away to uni.
Has it
I
still
think
continued to this day, or?
I don't think so. I think the person who was carrying on, the teacher, has left by now. But to say that it went on for like a good 5 years, like even after I came back, I just literally went to the school to again as a adult to play board games with them. So that felt nice. That felt nice. And I think yeah, a lot of using that space to practice public speaking, both in games, board, and even role playing, to a greater extent in immersing yourself into a talkative persona, is like the cleric I mentioned, is what has, I think, helped me a lot in practicing and coming out of my shell, if that makes sense.
Mm-mm. And it's really interesting because Shut Up and Sit Down, who you mentioned, have this video on, hey, here's how to teach board games. And I don't think the one danger of that video, I will say, is that people see this and think you need to do it to this level, because that is, yeah, sure, a best case scenario that you practice beforehand, you play it on your own. There have been plenty of times where I might teach something that I've never played before. I mean, heck, have, play tested things without solo testing them, but um, it's about being mindful of your audience. If this is someone who is going to have this one go playing a game, and then if they don't like this game, then they'll be turned off board games, of course there's a bigger responsibility. But if I'm playing with a friend who comes over and then they love board games already, and then I feel confident about showing them a game and saying, hey, I'm not sure about this game, it might be terrible, I just got it, but would you be willing to play it with me? And then normally they're like, yeah, I like playing video games, let's try it out. And so it's all about being mindful of your audience, of course. And I know there's one board game club where there's almost an expectation that, hey, we're going to play these big meaty games that take 2 hours. And if you're playing one of those, then please look up a video if you can beforehand, so that it gives you at least an idea of how to do things, and it will be taught because they still need to be taught, but then at least that will give you a bit of a head start. And I think but yes, it is a skill that can be practiced. And for sure, the 100th time I demoed Wibble, I was a lot better at it than the first time I demoed Wibble. I mean, at this point, I don't know how many hundred it is, but I can tell you for sure, the first time I took it to a convention, which I think might have been Spiel, or, well, when I took it to Spiel, I actually kept count somehow on my wrist. I made little marks because I was really curious, and it ended up being something like 200 games of Wibble and 150 games of Grabble during this one show. So um, it's really interesting because teaching is almost entirely about communication and empathy. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. Being able to relate to the people that you're trying to communicate to, be it teaching a board game or talking about your work in a presentation, adding that human element is very important to me, at least, to try and make sure that I'm understood.
But when you first saw those videos, was that the reason that you got into modern board games and set up this club, to have this opportunity to speak and come out of your shell, or was it more because it was something fun to do?
I definitely feel like, yeah, it did really push me, because there was a way I had not thought about what I've been thinking. I presume I was thinking a lot about ways of trying to communicate with others and uh, being being a bit more personable on my career pursuits. And when I saw someone communicate in a way that was so passionate, that was so that had enthusiasm and showed a fascination with the thing itself, not just like rehashing the rules in a verbal sense. Nothing against nothing against Tom.
Other reviews.
Yeah, yeah.
Egoism.
But yeah, it was a very it was like this is something I want to try and work towards, and that's that they definitely pushed me in that direction.
That sounds like a wonderful thing, and um, I'm curious about the interplay between board games and RPGs.
Mm.
So, RPGs are obviously a lot more about the communication and self expression. I mean, there's storytelling, you have to vocalize everything that you're doing. It's not enough to just pick up one piece and put it down. Whereas sometimes, especially a strategic board game, can come to a point where everyone's got their heads down, they're pondering, and it's like, okay, that's take my piece, okay, that, and communication can actually be verbal communication can be minimal during some games, let's say.
Mm.
So, what were RPGs something you got into afterwards via board games? And do you find that are far more useful as a source of practicing speaking and coming out of your shell?
I think. Well, again, this is interesting how it relates to my tabletop gaming story because I found a friend on the Sharpens It Down forums, right? And he was having his own game club, and so I started joining on his games. But then they basically said, "Hey, I'm starting to run D&D," and so I was like, "Yeah, I jump in on the chance." And I guess having spent more, I guess by circumstances of not being able to go out in 2020 and so on, I've found myself playing RPGs more than tabletop board games within the last few years, and yeah, they are very different because I guess I do like there are some games where you can just be quiet and enjoy each other's presence in the company. Stuff like railroading, where you're like drawing stuff, where you're like drawing maps and stuff, and just enjoying each other's presence in the quiet. But yes, I do agree that tabletop role playing game does allow a greater practice of words and stuff.
It feels like, well, I, I don't want, obviously, there's nuance here, and I hesitate to repeat myself, but I'm going to. So I believe that there's three, broadly speaking, types of games. Um, Ones where it's um, about strategic choice, ones where it's about the difficulty of doing the thing, which is where yogi and um, yeah, would certainly come in. I mean, I think the strategy and choice of, okay, I've seen people choose to do this, and then when they get one finger touching here, they do that, and then they already, which is a terrible choice. But for the most part, that's not the challenge of the game. And then the third part is self-expression or storytelling or creativity. And I understand that that's wrapped up in a thing. There are arguably games of abnegation, whether that's bingo or snakes and ladders, but or LCR, although I'm not sure if I would really count them as a game, but like I don't want to quibble with people who say that they are. But for me, a game has to have a feeling of agency. And so when we look at what we're doing, certainly the skill of doing, unless that doing is speaking quickly, like my game, a game where you bladder, I'm not going to say the full
Oh, I
title.
love that game.
Oh, thank you very much. That's a game where you need to learn to speak quickly. And with a game about drawing creatures complement to the drawings and complement to the complements, that is about delivering the complements. But for the most part, a game which is about strategic choice feels like that's the key thing that it's going to practice. And nothing against that, because I think this is an important thing to practice. I think that quick thinking, planning ahead, understanding what might happen, not thinking about the ramifications of things, and how simple rules might have emergent properties. These are all lessons that we can apply to our lives. But at the same time, yeah, if what you're looking for is communication or self-expression or being yourself, yes, we are acting normally as a different person who is not us in a role-playing game. It's a bit weird if you come in and you act as an exact facsimile of yourself. I mean, I know there's some indie RPGs where you do that, but those are a tiny, tiny exception. And so it feels natural that that's the way it's going to go. So, do you think that at this point, that is something that you're going to focus on? Like, because when you talk about coming out of your shell, it does
Yeah.
strike me that, yeah, there are games where even though this isn't the intended thing for like Yogi or In a Bind, as it was then called, you do need to be very kind of willing to make a fool of yourself. Is that part of the reason that you enjoy it?
Yes, absolutely. Both in, I guess, again, related to why I like Yogi and role playing, there's a sort of absurdity with the situations that you are being put in, either by the game design or by the person building the scenario. I guess if there is something similar to between Yogi and role playing games, is the slight looseness of the rules, because within Yogi, like you can choose however you want to place whichever hand you want, or there's the trick where put the glasses on, where you put the card on your nose and you've got glasses, right?
Yeah, spectacles definitely make it easier. And also, if
Yeah.
you've got the tight bracelets, or if you've got the headband, or if you've got headphones, that can help slide the card in so that
Yes,
it's
yes,
touching your ear.
yes.
Or
Uh,
if you've got the brass straps, then that helps keep it on your shoulder.
100%. And yeah, that's the sort of looseness between the rules, the sort of how one interprets the rules is, I guess, what I love about both games, because it's a uh, there are spaces for creativity within the constraints set by the system,
Mhm.
and I love trying to exploit that for not only on a sort of rudimentary mechanical level, but also for like a narrative purpose, and that gives a lot of meaning for me in the role playing space.
I'm curious if you've. Oh, I think I actually need to post something that I totally forgot about just now, and I'm
Mhm.
going to write it on my to-do list. But yes, I wonder how you feel about Yogi Guru or earlier on the Inner Bind expansions with the wild cards, because that's something where it's not just, okay, which thing are you going to use? Are you allowed to use accessories? Are you allowed to start putting on glasses or sunglasses just to help you mid game?
Mm.
But it's a case of how much are you going to mess with someone? Because the official rule is say something tricky, but not impossible. And what that means is very difficult to actually. I would say that if you take out the wild cards, then
Mm.
it can be played as a tournament game. I would say that there's enough, like if palm facing down, I would say up to 45 degrees. That's the one kind of thing. If I've got to run a tournament and be like, okay, this is exactly what's going to go on. But as soon as you bring in the wild cards, there's such a degree of looseness that everyone's kind of aware that, yeah, whoever wins, it depends more on what was chosen for those cards than any real degree of skill. How do you feel about those wild cards?
So I think that's the beauty of the flexibility of such games, because there are times and places where you want randomness and you want a bit more fluidity, and I think a good game has a fine-tuned balance between what is between luck and skill, but also but yeah, if people want to yeah, if people just want to have fun, you can choose to put that in. But if you want to be a bit more serious and you want to have something competitive and crunchy, you can also choose that. And I think the choice is very important there, which is what I really love, really appreciate, and am aware of in games.
The fact that someone is able to clearly get to a set of direction to say, this is what we want for this game session. It reminds me of the psychographics in Magic the Gathering, where Mark Rosewatzer said, okay, the big thing that I brought to this game was researching why people play. And the reason that people play, okay, let's look at Spikes, who are all about the competitiveness and competition. They want to improve themselves. It's not that they want to necessarily win, they just want to know how to improve themselves and get better and learn and or do this skill better. And then you've got the Johnnies or the Jennies who are all about the self-expression. And there it might be about building your deck, but in role-playing games it might be about something about just doing a cool thing with your character that only you would do, or in even a strategic game, it might be finding that cool combo that it might not guarantee victory, but hey, you did it and you managed to win this way that no one's ever won before. And then you've got the Timmy or Tammy, where these people, and I just realized Timmy who's watching, where these people are all about the big moments, and it might just be about might and we've got different frameworks for how people enjoy things. Like obviously there's the Bartle taxonomy for like play v player, player v environment, loving the players, and exploring just loving the environment. And it feels like people need to play the games for the same reason. If you and I play Go, or let's say we play Hive, because Go is a little bit different because of its balancing system. But let's say we play any abstract strategy game together. If you and I are playing it, and one of us is playing it to be super competitive, and one of us is playing it to just explore the system, I think one of us is going to get both of us will probably end up being frustrated. And this is like a talk that we need to have beforehand.
I think one of the great things that board games has taught me is to put winning as a lower priority than anything else, because I have more fascination with understanding the system and being able to use the space within the space and time to actually play and enjoy and understand things, but also enjoy the company of someone else, and in a way that I know that I'm quite comfortable with. But that's winning has these days become a lower priority, and just exploration is a lot higher for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it is time for us to start winding down. It's been a lovely chat, and I look forward to chatting with you in the very near future. I believe that we're chatting on Saturday, and we hadn't quite decided what to chat about, but I know you were interested in talking about exploring um, how theme and mechanics and fun interact, maybe exploring a little bit more of what Alchemists is doing that we've already explored, but maybe how Evolution and other games explore similar topics. Is that
Yeah, that's basically that's basically what I'm thinking. I did basically spoil my entire pitch with Alchemist, but yeah, I think comparing those things would be a nice conversation to have
And I think
from a
it's nice
designer.
to lead into it, and I think that there'll be, we can explore what's the kind of thesis question. I hate the word because that makes it sound like a bit more grandiose than it really is when it's really just meant to be a fun chat. but maybe we can explore how different games balance simulation and abstraction, I guess, is the overall thing. But at this point, I've asked you lots of questions. I've done a lot of rambling. But would you like to do something? Ask me something. Would you like to turn the tables a little bit with the question of the day? Question of the day.
Oh,
What's a
right.
little question before we go on our way? Question
Mm.
of the day.
Question of the day. So, oh god, I should have thought. I should have thought about that.
No, it's all good.
So what?
And the first thing that comes to your head is totally fine. Half of these questions of the day are totally meaningless and frivolous. It's totally okay.
I recall when I first talked to you about In a Bind in person, you said it was inspired partially by Flux, the card game of random of sort of you draw a card and you play a card and various rules add stuff. And to see you come from there and go to where you are now with your design, how do you think that has changed over time for you? Your thought process on design?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I think that's because I have designed quite a few games now. Like, I'm not saying that all of them are brilliant, and certainly most of them don't have the commercial viability of Yogi, but I would say that I come I've learned to get a lot closer to what I want straight off the bat. I'm better at imagining the interactions of things in my mind. I think that, yeah, as an example, something that I recently tried out for the first time was, I'm going to call it, this is not necessarily the final title, although for the Betty Bargain bag it might be, a game about auctioning cubes after an auction to become the auctioneer. And this all came from an idea with, hey, there's not that many games with actual English auctions. How could we get more games with English auctions? Okay, what would that involve? Okay, you've got that. Okay, I want the supporting mechanisms to be as simple as possible. And I think that's a big change that I've realized that you don't need to have these tiny differences. Sometimes, yes, chunky, less granularity can be a problem for balancing, but frankly, things being balanced perfectly is less important than it being understandable and fun and intuitive. And sometimes I would, even as a player, I would rather add 1 + 1 + 2 rather than add up 4 + 6 + 10, and even though they come up to the same number, basically, but then have to do that sort of work, even if the latter is slightly better balanced. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
And
100%.
I think that, yeah, seeing that, I kind of said, okay, this is a key part of the game. Let's explore if that works. Okay, let's do a blind auction for this. That's going to be the key thing that makes it work. Okay, let's work out the money in my head. Okay, there's money flowing out this way. There's money passing between players this way. And people need points. Okay, let's try sets give you points. You get points for having sets of different cubes, because I wanted there to be different things that you collect with the auctions. And it worked fine. And it definitely needed a bit more work. But I think that I've gotten to the point where I'm able to jumpstart it a lot more, thanks to that. There's a lot of lessons that I've learnt along the way, and it's nice actually to think back to, yeah, even when it came time for Kitty Cataclysm, that was me going back to the origins of In a Bind. And what if it was the non-physical way? What if I went the other direction? But yeah, even that, I started off with so many other things, and getting to where I wanted to be was challenging. Hello, Xate. It's nice to have you jump in. But we are just wrapping up, and at this point, I'm going to ask over to you. What are you up to? You can share button if you want to. I'm having a guest in my house in the very near future, in the next few minutes. I have to first clear this table because this table, I'm yeah hesitant to show you, but like it is a big mess, as you can
Oh,
sort of see. So I'm going to just clear the table. It might just involve putting it. Do I have an empty box that I could sort of store it in temporarily and just shift it off? And then we'll play some games, and I will cook some stuff. And yeah, tonight I will definitely, yeah, I'll have someone else over. I'll make time to go out to the library. But today's for me is just a day of chilling out, seeing people face to face, and playing games, some of which will be already published, some of which might not. How about you? What's you up to? Is there something you're looking forward to? Something, and Sate says the table wasn't the biggest mess we just witnessed. Are you referring to the rest of the room? But what are you up to, Daniel? What is everyone else up to?
let's see. I am going to be turning on my work computer and crunching more data because as a genetic epidemiologist, I basically study the genetic links between the links between genes to lung disease, and I'm trying to analyze a big data set for that. I guess this evening I've also got to do a bit of vacuuming and yeah, I got to take out the bins because it's a rubbish night where I am. So yeah, pretty normal day.
Rubbish night, rubbish night. You got to take out the rubbish.
Yeah, a
So,
clean. Yeah.
to recap and wrap up before we finish up, we talked about so much. We talked about getting into board games early in 2013 via Shut Up and Sit Down, being so inspired by their enthusiasm, by the way that they're talking, having via the Shut Up and Sit Down Discord, having this RPG going for the past 4 years, which is awesome. Talking about Sorcerer City, a fantasy Carcassonne real time game, which it does sound quite cool. We talked about the brilliant thing of the day being connections, folk who listen and don't judge. We talked about Adventure Zone Steeplechase, a sibling teaching the theory of the mind and copying stuff and being a little bit annoying. Alchemists, Alien Frontiers, being an omni gamer in a bind, and going back to Shut Up and Sit Down, setting up the board game club at school, learning how to teach and coming out of your shell, being forced to interact with people, and again getting into the RPGs, that being possibly a better way for creativity and self-expression, but having these absurdity of situations, whether it's engendered by the games master in an RPG or the cards in Yogi, and about the fluidity of everything going on in life, then it came time for me to chat a little bit about how my design process has changed. Talked about doing studies and playing games, and at this point, I'd like to remind everyone that yes, if you want to check me out, I'm Stuff by Bears in all of the places. And if you want to check out Daniel, where do you like to be found on the internet?
Mainly, I'm my personal gaming Twitter is Chun CHUN underscore WA40, and yeah, that's I mainly retweet. I don't talk much, but hey, I hope that my tweets are of quality.
And please feel free to spread the word. Spread the word. Um, thank you very much, everyone. And the only thing left for me to say is at this point, lots of love, and as always, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.